Hi, everyone. I'm Jess Brill, the Director of Omnichannel Marketing at Monotype. Welcome to our first Monotype Fonts webinar of 2024. We are so excited to have you here today to learn how to level up your Monotype Fonts experience with us. If you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to use the Q&A functionality at the bottom. We will be addressing questions at the end. I'm so excited to introduce you to Jay Liu, who's going to be walking you through some Monotype fonts, insider tips and tricks. So Jay Liu is our senior pre-sales manager and Monotype fonts expert. His love for typography began many years ago with graffiti, instilling a passion for the creative and technological aspects of fonts. With an impressive 11 years at Monotype, Jay has evolved into a subject matter expert for all things related to Monotype fonts. His knowledge and extensive training focus on the diverse cohort of creatives that use the hub and offer the best insights when it comes to finding, selecting, and designing with fonts. With that, I'm going to hand it off to Jay to kick us off.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all our font friends out there, and welcome to the webinar. I'll be walking you guys through the Monotype Fonts platform, specifically walking through the font discovery and a couple other cool things that are laid out on the platform. Currently, we're looking at the main homepage. At the top, there's a carousel for any new features, new inventory, all that good stuff is added in the carousel above. If I scroll below that, there are some tiles that if you click on, would immediately bring you into our inventory if you were searching by font style. Any new typeface releases are added down here below, and any foundries that have been added into the platform can also be listed here down below as well. And with that, let's go up to the top and click into the browse section. As I hover my mouse over the browse, it will give you, the user, two categories. You could search by font, or you can directly search by foundries. For today's webinar, I'm going to be searching by font, so let's dive into the inventory. As it brings us into the inventory over at Monotype Fonts, just so that you're aware, there are currently 150,000 fonts and continuously growing. And although that can be really overwhelming when we go through that font discovery journey, to assist you, we've added some filters on the left-hand side of the screen to really guide you as you go through that discovery path. On the top left is Monotype tags. If I was looking for, say, something collegiate, university, I can select the college theme, and it will filter out all college theme fonts that are available directly in the Monotype fonts inventory. This current layout, which is actually my favorite, is the inspirational tile grid, where it shows you a little bit of artwork, the typeface down below, and it's broken up into a grid. But on the top, if it's easier for you, you could also toggle over to switch it over to listing like this, or if you prefer not to have images, you can turn that off as well as type here in the box. So if you have a look and feel of the font that you're looking for, you can type out that text as you scroll, navigate, looking for the fonts that you potentially have an interest for. If I clear this out, toggle this back over to grids, and remove the text up here, and change the image one last time. Aside from the filters up top, the next filter is searching by font style. So for this example, I'm going to look for a sans, and then there's a drop down here that allows me to pick either geometric sans, grotesque sans, humanistic sans. I will select that. Toggle off that filter so that Monotype Fonts shows all the humanistic sans that are available directly within this inventory. If I clear this out, another very popular search functionality on the left-hand side of the screen is you could search and toggle through the different weights and heights and widths. So if you're looking for a very specific typeface and what size and what width, you can most certainly use that sliders on the left-hand side of the screen. And then below that, another very popular search functionality is searching by the language support. So for an example, let's say you're working on a project that requires multiple language coverage. In this case, I will select English. And then I will also select another language. In this case, I will select Korean. Now, by placing both languages into the filter, it shows all the fonts in the inventory that support both languages. Thereby, regardless of region or language, you're at least consistent with the typeface and the look and feel that you're looking for. If I clear that out, Aside from that, if I scroll even further down below, you can even search by foundry. So if you have a specific foundry that is a favorite, you can select that, as well as use all the filters on the top left-hand side of the screen to really narrow down and search for the fonts that you're looking for. So aside from going through and searching by language, by style, another exciting feature is searching by our AI capability, which is a new feature, which is what the font. Some of you guys might be aware that the what the font technology is similar to what is available on my fonts. We have now excited to add it into the Monotype fonts platform so that you can really search for artwork here as well. So for the first example, I'm going to throw in some graffiti art. And it may take a moment to identify. So it starts to scrub through the inventory, looking for the best possible match. And it's almost like having a type designer at your fingertips. It begins to scrub through our entire inventory, looking for the best possible match. Now, when it comes to handwritten graffiti or handwritten text, it can get a little troublesome and it doesn't necessarily find it. If you're not completely satisfied with any of the recommendations, as always, I encourage you to reach out to us. And we would lean on the expertise of a studio and a type designer to really assist you with trying to find that alternate font or recommendation. Let's go ahead and try another piece of artwork that I'd like to add. Give me one moment as it may go back. Cool. So now I'll drop another piece of artwork. And in this case, it identified Stranger Things. Click here to identify, give it a few moments, and it immediately brings us into the platform, looking for the best possible match that's available. In this case, Stranger Things brought us to ITC Bengat, bold condensed. If I click on the font style, it'll bring us into the font family of the particular font. This is actually done so a little bit on purpose. We just want to ensure that all users are available and are aware of all the fonts available in this particular inventory. On the top, you could search by styles over here. Down here, you can even future-proof. So if I need to see what it looks like and change the different point sizes, I most certainly can do so from up here. If I scroll down below, I can see all the individual weights listed here below. Or if you're a font nerd like me, you toggle it to the character map and check every single glyph. Perhaps you need to ensure currency symbols or different glyphs to ensure that it actually supports what you're looking for. And then if I scroll back up to the top, as we've already gone through looking for what the font with artwork, keep in mind that at the family page on the top right-hand corner of the screen, there is a similar tool. If I click on the similar tool, essentially, again, it's like having a type design at your fingertips. It begins to scrub through the inventory, looking for other possible matches to ITC Bengat. As I can scroll down below, give me all the different alternate suggestions that possibly may match or pair and complement that particular font. If I take one step back to the font family, directly from the font weight, as well as the font family, if I scroll all the way down to the bottom, it will give you even more information and details about that particular typeface. A quick bio about the font or the family. On the right-hand side, all the language support that it covers. Down below, typographic features, as well as the classification that it falls under, as well as the type designer. And we also have public tags here. So if you click on some of these, you can continue to search by different themes. So in this case, let's go ahead and click on, say, decorative. By doing so, it will jump back into the Monotype fonts inventory, again, scrolling through the entire platform, looking for alternate matches or other fonts that fall inside that decorative theme. And as I scroll through some of these, let's go ahead and select one font. Once I select the font, on the right-hand side, it'll actually give you a couple of options of how you're going to consume the use of the font. Now, best practice is to click on the sync option. By clicking on sync, this will actually activate and sync the font with our Monotype desktop app. Once the font is synced to the Monotype desktop app, you would simply search for the font like you would normally do in any of your software applications, specifically in the font drop-down menu. So whether you're using Adobe Creative Cloud, Sketch, Canva, or even Figma or PowerPoint, you would just simply click on the font drop-down menu, and the font that we synced here should easily appear from there. Now, once the fonts are synced, just so you're aware, you can work offline. So if you're traveling or have poor Wi-Fi, all is good. You can still use the fonts offline. Once you're done with the fonts, what you can also do is you can unsync them if you like. There is no limit in caps in terms of how many fonts you sync to your app, but I would be mindful of trying not to sync way too many as it can bog down the performance in that case. So best practice, just sync the ones that you need or short families as you're going through that font discovery process. And then if I head back over to the font family section over here, as you can see, just a quick reminder on the top left side, you can toggle over to the different weights of the font. So if you need to see how it renders in, say, light condense, I can change it so I can quickly see what it looks like. I can also toggle this over to our dark mode. So if you prefer to consume your fonts and looking out on a dark screen, you can most certainly do it from this aspect as well. And then aside from searching for fonts, it brings us to that second piece within the platform, which allows you to collaborate with one another. So what you can do is if I head over to the My Library section of the platform, this is the side where you can create your own font list and then share that font list with other folks on the team. On the top left-hand corner, I can create a font list, a web project, a digital ad, or a folder. If I click on a font list, this is the fonts that you would commonly use to do any testing or mock-up work. So in this case, I will go ahead and create a particular font list. I've already created one called 101 Test. And now what I could do is simply head back over to the Browse section, begin searching, looking for a font. In this case, I'll pick Neue Helvetica, which brings us to the Neue Helvetica family page. I'll scroll down, and instead of wanting to sync the entire family, I just want to add one or two weights to that particular font list folder. So I'd like to add 35 thin. So I can go ahead and select it here and click Done. And then I'll add one more, thin italic. And when I select it, I also have the option of which format that I would like to use, as some fonts in the inventory are available in both OpenType Pro, OpenType Standard, as well as TrueType flavored fonts too. So if you need TTF files, we most certainly have them here to support as well. So I'm going to go ahead and add that weight as well. Now that we've added those two particular weights, if I quickly head back over to my library and click into that 101 test, you'll see that the two weights are now available here. Now that my font list has been created, I can share my font list out with other individuals, departments, or teams. At the top left hand, I can click on Share Access. In order to share the font list, the other user or department need to be registered to the Monotype Fonts platform. You can invite your users, invite external vendors if you like to, and that way you can share that font list. Once you invited them into the list, they'll have access, and it gives them better clarity, understanding, and confirming that we're all using the same version of the same font from one location, a true single source of truth, and better clarity for your clients and designers so that I know exactly which font was approved. As it can happen when we're thinking of classic legacy fonts, think of like Helvetica or Arial, it can be confusing if we're using different versions of that font. So with Monotype fonts, this gives you better clarity and confidence that we're all collaborating with the correct font file and font format. From up here, once you reach this particular font list, it's very easy to simply click on Sync All, and any fonts that were added into this particular font list will automatically activate to your Monotype font desktop app. Aside being able to search, you can also co-collaborate. So if you like to create a font list and have someone else work with you to add fonts, remove fonts, invite other users, you most certainly can do so, as well as making that font list shareable company-wide, or if you just need to lock it down and only share it to one individual, you most certainly can do so. The other nice cool feature about the Monotype platform is it allows you to either sync the font, or for the admin folks that have access to the Monotype Fonts platform, you also have the ability to download the actual font file. So if there's ever a need to package that font file, know that you also have that option as well. but I would encourage you to work with your admins of the Monotype Fonts platform to get that permission if you already have it. Otherwise, you could feel to reach out to us if you have any questions regarding that. But the Monotype Fonts platform does allow 2 delivery mechanisms when it comes to using font to do any design or mock-up work. Now, aside from having the fonts in OpenType and TrueType formatted flavors, also Monotype Fonts offers web font files as well. So if a web font is needed, the best practice is to first click on Create New on the top left-hand corner and actually create a web project first. You'll need to create a web project prior to downloading any web font files. So for this example, I've already created one ahead of time. So let me just go into my web project here. And I've added 4 weights of Futura. Now, when you do package those web font files, there are 2 mechanisms in terms of deployment of our web font files. If you prefer, we provide you a line of code. So if you'd rather host a web font on our CDN, you can do so. You also have the ability to download the self-hosting kit. This actually gives you the web font files so that you can self-host as you see fit. We also provide you the HTML and CSS. And then lastly, we provide a subset tool. In short, what the subset feature tool does is it decreases the size of a web font file. So if you've ever had a concern about the overall web font performance, rendering, legibility, know that you have the subsetting tool at your disposal. This is highly beneficial when you're using subsetting on any non-Latin fonts. So think of Asian fonts, just in general, anything non-Latin. Typically, those web font files are huge. The subset tool can be super beneficial, decreasing the size. You can stay on brand and know that that font will render and perform correctly. The only thing to keep in mind is anytime you subset a file, if there's any new changes or adjustments, you'll need to download an entirely new desktop self-hosting kit to ensure it captures the correct format and the size of the web font file. And then lastly, if I head back over at the top, if I click into the Resources tab, know that over in the Resources tab, you'll have our case studies, check out our podcast, as well as some of our collections and case studies that are available directly within here. And I know I covered a lot of ground today, and I know it is also being recorded, but I'd also like to remind you that on the top right-hand corner, if you are registered Monotype Fonts users, click on the dropdown and head over to the Help Center section. Everything I discussed today and more is broken up into step-by-step documentation down here below, or I would encourage you to bookmark my video tutorial. Here, I've actually created short little 2-3 minute videos of every section within the Monotype Fonts platform. How to actually search for fonts, maybe download those fonts, syncing, creating those folder structures, and all that good stuff in terms of importing fonts or structuring your library or the similar functionality. And if you have any other questions beyond this, I always encourage you to reach out to Monotype, as we are your font friends and we're happy to help. With that, I'd like to open up if there are any questions.
So we've had a couple of questions come in, Jay. So Carolyn asks, do I have to have the Monotype desktop app launched at all times to have the font synced to Adobe Creative Suite? Or can the plugins for inside ACS apps keep them synced?
It's a good question. The Monotype desktop app would have to remain logged in and on. You can minimize it and run in the background, but it has to be logged in.
Okay, thank you. Barbara asks, how do you know what licenses you need?
That's a good question. So no, we're not going to cover it completely on this, but the one thing I could say is that all fonts within the Monotype Fonts platform is governed under one agreement. It just depends on wherever the font file lives is where a license is required. I'm happy to take that question offline in terms of understanding where the font lives in terms of what license is required.
Makes a lot of sense. Thank you. We had a couple people ask, how do I add someone to my team in the product?
That's a great question. So step one is whoever is the admin of your Monotype Fonts platform, you'll need to ask them to invite the user into the platform. It's usually with an email address. The way you'll know if you have admin rights is if you log into your Monotype Fonts platform, check to see if you have a Manage tab on the top of your browser. If you do, that will confirm that you have admin rights or at least some form of admin permissions. Toggle over to the admin side and you'll be able to invite them via their email address.
Awesome, thank you. We also had a few other people ask, how do I save fonts that I like?
Ooh, great question. So there is a favorite button. So as you go to the discovery, there'll be a little favorite icon. And the cool thing is the favorite icon will only save it to your profile. So no one else will see your favorites other than you.
Someone else asked, there are so many to choose from. How do I choose the right font?
Ooh, yes. Well, the way I usually typically answer that is before selecting the right font, let's understand what the project or design you're working on first. By knowing the theme or an idea, or at least a core baseline of what you're working on, that can lead you into which 2 or 3 fonts to select from, and then start going down that journey. But the best start is to figure out where it's going to be and what's going to complement with that particular font.
I think we'll do a couple more if you're good with that, Jay.
Yeah.
So someone else asked, when would you recommend using a list versus a folder?
So best practice, I would always create a folder and then create a list within that folder. That way down the road, if those different lists start to get bigger or there's more folks collaborating on the managerial part, making it just easier, if you can have multiple font lists within a folder, and you can have the same font appear in different lists. So for an example, you may have the same font that's going to be used on 2 different campaigns or 2 different projects. That's totally fine. You can place that particular font in 2 separate font lists and it's not an issue. But general practice, just to keep it more organized, create a folder and place everything within that folder, because then you can actually nest that folder out if you have to.
Makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Can you take away access to a folder once you already shared it?
Absolutely, you can. Yes.
Perfect. And last question I think we have time for. Do I need to download the font files in order to use the fonts in my project?
No. You would use the Monotype app and sync the font. It's just that Monotype fonts gives you 2 options. You can either download or you can sync. Best practice, I strongly suggest to always use this, the sync of the Monotype app. Gives you the most current, up-to-date font that you're going to use.
Thank you so much, Jay. That's all we have time for today. This webinar has been recorded. We will be sending out the slides and the recording. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be sent to all registrants. We know several people were not able to make it live today. Thank you so much for your time, and we hope you join for the next webinar coming soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.